A lot has changed for the Kansas City Chiefs this season, and if we step back and we look at the offensive changes and the defensive changes from the playoffs last season, both of those changes are largely negative. On offense, the Kansas City Chiefs had found a rhythm in the playoffs. They had found a number one wide receiver in Rashee Rice, and they were really finding an identity at the end of last season. Coming into this year, those multipliers on offense were expected to be actual exponentials on offense with some new additions. However, things have not played out. Some along the offensive line have been the fact that players have not panned out the way that we maybe thought they were going to. Plus, there have been a rash of injuries, particularly, pardon me, at the wide receiver position. Rashee Rice, chief among them. On the defensive side of the ball, however, last year, the Kansas City Chiefs found an identity on defense that was dominant. They were a dominant defense that shut teams down. Coming into this year, we thought that some of that would continue, despite the fact that L'Jarius Sneed, Willie Gay were gone. Not to mention smaller contributors that were actually seemingly glue guys like those along the defensive line. This season for the defense, the struggles have been, however, getting to the quarterback and the second corner, not the first corner. L'Jarius Sneed's departure left Trent McDuffie to step up to that number one role, and he has been locking receivers down. The sack department for the Kansas City Chiefs, Sack City, has not quite panned out the way that we had every reason to believe that it would have, and we were left to wonder, was Colin Saunders' departure really bigger than we had previously recognized? But in light of recent events, those recent events being basically just Charles Omenihu returning to the lineup, the defense is starting to come back. Now, the defense hadn't completely fallen off. The point totals for the opposition were still incredibly manageable for a potent offense. The offense hasn't quite been so potent, but we have a little bit of action in the media circling the Charles Omenihu return. However, I think there are some things that are not being observed in the larger capacity, and I'm going to try to point those out in today's video. But we will start with an excerpt from Arrowhead Pride, an article titled Charles Omenihu's Return Sparking the Chiefs' Defense. Returning from a torn ACL, the Kansas City defensive lineman is finding his rhythm and earning praise. Again, from Arrowhead Pride by Rico Mendoza. Now, there's a short excerpt from this article, a longer one from the next article, and then I'll get into the stats of things. The article contains this. Last season, Omenihu was a key contributor to the Chiefs' pass rush. He finished with 7 sacks, which was the team's third highest total. But after his injury in the AFC Championship, he missed the first 11 games of 2024 on the team's reserve PUP list, physically unable to perform list. Since returning in the Week 13 matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders, Omenihu has logged 89 defensive snaps, close to half of the team's total. While the veteran player is still shaking off some rust, Spagnuolo has been encouraged by his progress and knows Omenihu's contributions will be pivotal to the team's approach in the playoffs. Now, for the sake of this video, I excluded the Raiders game as that was his first game back. I think it's kind of unfair to judge a player's return based on his first game back, especially when that player has missed a lot of time. The Super Bowl and then the first 11 games of this season. And adding to that was his suspension beginning last year. So there's a lot of missed football in Charles Omenihu's last 2 seasons. So I excluded the Raiders game. I think that's understandable. Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones praises veterans' impact vital for our defensive line's success from Chiefs Wire, written by Ed Easton Jr. The Kansas City Chiefs defense had its most productive game in Week 15's victory over the Cleveland Browns. Multiple players with sacks and interceptions included veteran defensive lineman Charles Omenihu. Chiefs defensive tackle Chris Jones spoke with reporters on Wednesday about Omenihu's getting his first sack as necessary to motivate him for the postseason run. Well, the big relief is that Charles Omenihu got his first sack. We were able to make sure Charles got a sack and make sure he got in rhythm, said Jones. We definitely need Charles playing his best, especially towards the end of the year, and creep up into the playoff. It can be vital for our defensive line success. I think he's continuing to do that. Tershawn Wharton is playing some of his best ball right now, and got to keep George Karlaftis at it. One thing not mentioned there, that sack that Charles Omenihu had, the strip sack that Charles Omenihu had, was as close to Derek Thomas that I have seen in a Chiefs uniform since Derek Thomas left. I will just say left because you understand. Omenihu recorded his first sack since returning from injury 2 weeks ago. How he now has 8 sacks since joining the Chiefs in 2023. He missed 6 games to start last season due to suspension, but still finished with 10 sacks. Now, I believe that's including the 10 is including the playoffs there. Here's something interesting. The Chiefs, for 2022 and 2023, both, I think you will remember, Super Bowl runs, were among the leaders in the league in sacks. In 2023, they finished second in the NFL with 57 sacks. You see in this graphic here, one interesting note. Keep an eye on the Bills, the Colts, and the Browns. The Bills with 54, the Colts with 51, the Browns with 49, because they're going to pop up in the next graphic as well. The Chiefs finished second in the NFL in 2023 with 57 sacks. Now, there's still a couple games to go in 2024, but here's how things look now. The Chiefs are way down at 21st with 32 sacks on the season. The Browns, the Colts, and the Bills have a precipitous fall from the top as well, but the Chiefs and the Bills are the only 2 teams that fell this far and are in playoff contention. Curiously, the dominant run of the Lions, they have 31 sacks on the year, 1 fewer than Kansas City, despite the fact that they are known as a defensive team. Getting to the quarterback is not the only way to derail an offense. Getting close to the quarterback can derail an offense. The defensive backs can derail an offense. Linebackers are sort of diminished in today's NFL, but they play a role in both of those departments. Now, in the first 12 games of the season, what this means is that the Chiefs had 24 sacks. That is an average of 2 sacks per game. That's not going to get you very far. It's not going to get you very high in the rankings. Last season, the Ravens had 60 to lead the NFL. The Ravens were the prohibitive favorites entering the playoffs for a Super Bowl title. In the last 2 games, since the return of Charles Omenihu, the Chiefs have 8 sacks. Now, obviously, that is an average of 4 per game. However, Charles Omenihu himself has accounted for just 1 of those sacks. That strip sack that we talked about earlier. This means that in addition to being a freak of nature, Charles Omenihu is a force multiplier for this defense. Charles Omenihu is someone that the offense has to keep in mind. Charles Omenihu is someone that the offense has to account for. Because more attention is being paid to Charles Omenihu, less is being paid to Chris Jones, to George Karlaftis, even to Tershawn Wharton, who is emerging this season having the best year of his professional career. Now, doubling the sack average. Now, obviously, 2 games is a very small sample size. You're not talking about an entire 17-game run where the Kansas City Chiefs have doubled their sack output, but they had 5 against the Browns. 5 against the Browns. 3 against the Chargers. The Chargers had a more mobile, big-bodied quarterback. The Browns had a quarterback that was kind of back there. I don't think you would necessarily say that Jameis Winston is immobile, but he's not a guy who's going to shrug off a lot of sacks. The Chiefs capitalized on that. They were able to get to him. They were able to get him pulled from the game. Now, I think that's notable because the Browns have nothing to lose by keeping Jameis Winston in the game. They're not playoff bound. Jameis Winston is not their franchise quarterback. And I think, in fact, Jameis Winston adds a bit of energy to that offense. Even if he's a bit goofy in some of his antics, he's not afraid to throw the ball. That was evidenced by all of the interceptions as well. But he is someone that is capable of moving an offense down the field. He did not do that against the Kansas City Chiefs. The return of Charles Omenihu has, for all observable facts, been massive for this team and has created opportunities across the defensive line for other players. That, I think, is being a little bit overlooked here, because what it does is it makes your defense multiple in the same way, in a comparable way, I guess I should say, to an offense having multiple good wide receivers. We have seen in today's NFL, one wide receiver, the guy, is not good enough to really make for an offense in the way that once it was. Defenses are able to counter that. A defensive line having multiple the guys, Chris Jones, now George Karlaftis has been reinvigorated, and Charles Omenihu, not to mention, again, Tershawn Wharton, makes this defense multiple and formidable, makes this pass rush multiple and formidable. And just like from yesterday's video, we do have a sneak peek at Petty Lavon and his response to this. Petty Lavon is pleased by this development. If you have not used Grok on X/Twitter, it is a very powerful image generation tool. This is not an actual picture of Petty Lavon. This is something that I dreamed up, typed in, and got an output for, and it's just incredible. Not to mention this one. Look, a paisley suit with a maybe paisley / striped tie. That is incredible. He's got the mob style haircut. This is an incredible image generator. But one thing I didn't know, we've been calling Patrick Mahomes' alter ego Petty Lavon for a while now. I don't know who came up with it, but whoever it was, that was amazing. I think it was just sort of a crowd reaction on Twitter to the fact that Patrick Mahomes hangs on to all of the doubt, all of the naysayers, all of the time. But Lavon Petty was a real person. And here's the thing. Some of you might know people who've been known as Lavon Petty because this is largely a Midwest occurrence. Lavon Petty, 1917 to 1984, is from Salt Lake City. Lavon Doris Petty, 1925 to 1998, was from Iowa. There are, it's possible, descendants of Lavon Doris Petty watching this channel today. Mitty Lavon Hooten Petty is also from Iowa, or Georgia, never mind, I'm an idiot. So there are people that have been named Lavon Petty, even if Petty Lavon is a manifestation of, how would you call it? So this is Patrick Mahomes, the emergence of Petty Lavon, and this Kansas City Chiefs team are a manifestation of flyover states' anger towards being known as flyover states, I think. The fact that this quarterback, Patrick Mahomes, has retribution in his every throw in the NFL, has retribution in mind in his every throw in the NFL, is sort of the Midwest fighting back and saying, okay, I mean, you guys can have the media. Here in the Midwest, we will have new media. Look at did you know Vsauce on YouTube is from Kansas? Did you know, is it Imiru or Imitu? is also from Kansas. So there is a large contingency of Midwesterners making up the new age, the new voices in media, and I think that is pretty awesome. Anyway, Charles Omenihu's return to the defense should get this defense the next leg up heading into the playoffs. And as we in Kansas City flyover country know, the playoffs are all that really matters. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing that I talk about on this channel, and sometimes petty Levon and strange facts that can be found on the internet. And I hope to have you back for the next one.